Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick video about my totally biased, totally not worth much subjective opinion on the Century VZ2008. I don't know how well you guys can see all of it, but yeah, just wanted to give you kind of my thoughts on it. My thoughts are going to differ, I think, in large part from what a lot of YouTube channels say about it. I watched a lot of videos about this gun before I actually traded for it. I did trade into this gun. And a lot of them were really glowing reviews. A lot of them had a lot of people spoke really highly of it. I think a lot of that's probably because they got the gun for free and wanted to give a good review of it. YouTube's full of that, and yeah, there's not many people out there making honest content on guns these days. Anyway, we're going to go through it in a pretty simple format. Pros, cons, my overall opinion, and would I recommend it to you. Not that my recommendation means very much, but anyway, we'll start with the pros. So, my favorite thing about this gun is the weight of the gun. That is something that I did see a lot of YouTube channels saying, that everyone really harps on how light it is. And that's true, especially how light it is in the front end. As you see, this one has a simple slant brake on it, although I prefer to shoot it without a slant brake. Real thin, it's a Green Mountain barrel, as far as I know. Real thin barrel, you know, real slim, like minimalist almost, kind of gas block, no cleaning rod, that saves a couple ounces. The gas tube, well, not even a gas tube really, it's like the cover for the piston, is really lightweight, just really stamped. This one's dirty as hell, but it's lightweight stamped sheet metal, so it makes it for a really lightweight, especially in the front end. And for a rifle that you shoot offhand a lot, having it be light in the front end is really nice. And so that's probably my favorite overall aspect of the gun, how light it is in the front end. Something that makes it light in the front end is, again, nothing going on in the muzzle. I have with me here my AK-74, and as you see, this is has this brake on here. And while this brake is very effective at taming the recoil and the muzzle flash, it is not a lightweight brake at all. The front sight block for the AK is also much beefier than the VZ2008, and the cleaning rod does add some weight on the front end. The gas block is also bigger. Bayonet lugs add a inconsequential amount of weight to the front end of the gun, but yeah, I mean, it adds up. Every ounce counts. And this gun, when you're carrying it, is really nice, really lightweight. Another thing I like about it are the sights of the gun. There's no one behind the camera, so the sights are very AK-like, very much like a Chinese AK. They have a fully hooded front post sight, fully hooded front post. I like that a lot. I like the fact that a regular AK sight tool, which most guys that have AKs will probably have at least one of these laying around, will work on this, and I like that a lot. Some of you guys may be familiar with Dracos out there. The front sight on this gun is very much like a Draco, fully hooded front post, nice open top hood, so plenty of light gets in there. It's not dark like a Kar 98K's sight. You got a really thick front sight hood, and it's completely solid on the top, so not much light really gets in there. Sorry if you can't see me. Me and my wife just set this up as a quick impromptu, so I'll try to keep everything in frame, but I don't really know where the frame is at. Anyway, another thing I like about this gun is the ease with which it disassembles. I would argue that it's actually easier to disassemble than an AK, because just two push pins, captive push pins too, really nice. I'm not going to break it all the way down here because I don't want to, spend the rest of the video trying to get it back together. But, the dust cover and the recoil spring, the striker spring and recoil spring are both contained in the dust cover. One pin, it just pops right out, pulls right out. Your bolt just comes right out, similar to an AK. You saw me do it earlier, pop the gas tube cover off. You don't have to take this out. What I really like is that you don't have to take the bolt out, because there's no piston attached to the bolt that runs through this. So, and because it's not a complete tube, it's just a cover, you just, again, pop this pin out right here and just wrench it off, and voila, there's your gas tube cover. So I really like that, actually. In the internals of the gun, as far as like the bolt carrier and the locking wedge, They're not quite as easy to take apart as an AK. There are more parts on the inside, but I feel like that balances it out. And yes, I'm going to spend the rest of this video comparing this gun to an AK, because I'm an AK guy, and primarily that's my favorite, rifles or AK rifles. And yeah, so that's what I'm most familiar with. So that's what I continually compare every gun I have to. Anyway, another thing I really like is my notes are on the ground. Anyway, another thing I really like is last round bolt hold open. So this is an empty mag, obviously. Yeah, empty, you see. So the gun automatically locks itself open on an empty mag, and that's nice. That's probably the biggest edge that this gun has over an AK, because I've been shooting AKs for years, and anybody that shot AKs for a long time will know you'll be, ripping through a mag and on your merry way until you hear that click. Well, with this gun, there is no real click. It holds itself open, and you can tell by the difference in the recoil impulse that you're out of ammo, much like an AR-15. And I think that's probably the biggest advantage to this gun over an AK. The magazines themselves are made out of aluminum, not steel. I don't know if there are any other aftermarket companies that make AK mags for VZ58. No, Magpul doesn't. I don't think ProMag does. Thermal, I don't think anybody makes VZ58 mags. I didn't bother to do a Google search, so I may be completely wrong about that. Let me know in the comments below, because I would like to try out an aftermarket mag. These, though, are great. I got 5 of these with the gun, and they're made out of aluminum, so they're lightweight, but they're also rigid and strong enough to where I'm not really worried about damaging them, chucking them out of the gun at the range or anything. Yeah, they got, rib reinforcements, much like any kind of surplus AK mag. And another thing I really like about this gun is the size of the gun when it's folded. So this, obviously, as you can see, is the Paratrooper stock. I have it wrapped in paracord here because it's November. While it's warm today, shooting this gun when it gets below like 45 degrees and you're sticking your cheek to this paracord stock, even though it has this heavy kind of epoxy paint on it, it's unpleasant. It's really cold, and so I wrapped it in paracord to try to mitigate that. But you see, when the stock folds, it lays down really slim to the rifle. That's really nice. It also doesn't interfere with the controls very much, which I really like. The charging handle, as you can see, is swept up to allow you to be able to access the stock even when charging handle's folded or tilted up so you can access it even with the stock folded. And the safety is easy to flip off, much easier than a right side folding stock, like a Romanian folder for an AK. It's much easier to take the safety on and off when this stock folded. Another thing I like about this gun is the sling attachment point. That is another advantage that this has over an AK, in my opinion, because you see the sling attachment point is on the left side of the gun. So here, similar to an AK, on the gas block, the small little loop, but most importantly, it's on the left side of the stock when the gun is folded, and when the gun is open. Well, when you fold the stock, this is attached to the stock, but this part where the sling attaches doesn't move at all. So it's really, really nice. In my opinion, you should keep the stock sling attachment points on one side of the gun or the other, and it drives me nuts on the AK-100 series guns whenever the stock is unfolded. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. This drives me crazy. This is my 74 again. The sling attachment is on the right side of the gun, but the rear sling attachment is right side of the gun, but the front sling attachment is on the front left side of the gun. It drives me crazy. I hate it, because obviously I'm shooting this gun a lot more with the stock unfolded than I am with it folded, and I'm constantly fiddling, like I'm reaching around the sling, reaching under it. It's just, when it's folded, it's nice. It's on the same side of the gun, but it's only like that when it's folded, which drives me nuts. I wish they would just put the sling attachment point right here. That would make me so happy if they were to do that, but they didn't. Yeah, so another thing I like that has to do with the sling is the method of sling attachment. It's got these simple little, this is an original sling, by the way. It's got these simple little frogs here really similar to like a Car 98K, but this is a pretty well-worn sling. It's pretty rough leather, so this is it's still soft, really supple, and it's really easy to take this sling on and off. I'd argue this is a better system than the AK because I have a surplus sling on my 74 and I cannot get it off without a pair of pliers. I have to squeeze it together with a pair of pliers. You know, some of you may have the hand strength out there, but this right here, I don't have the hand strength to squeeze that. I just don't have the strength in my fingers to do it. And it's not the end of the world because it's not like I'm taking the slings on and off these guns a lot, but it's still annoying that it's not a completely toolless disassembly. Yeah, you can do it with maybe the cleaning rod, wedge the cleaning rod up in here and you know, pry it off, but it's a lot easier to take the sling on and off on the VZ than it is on the AK. Something else I really like about this gun is the caliber that it's in. You know, some of you are going to disagree, that's fine. But I think from 0 to 300 yards, I think that 7.62x39 is king. I think it's probably the best intermediate round if that's all you're going to do, is shoot from 0 to 300 yards. It's great. It's readily available. This is early November 2020. The election just wrapped up and we're in the midst of the worst kind of panic buying that I can remember. I wasn't really buying a whole lot of guns and ammo during Sandy Hook, but this has been a much longer panic buying episode, so to speak. So 7.62x39 is available at the hardware store just 2 or 3 miles from my house. 5.56 is not, and neither is 9mm for that matter. Nonetheless, I do like the caliber. I've taken some small game and whitetail deer with 7.62x39 and never had a problem, never had to excessively track the deer. Always been pleased with its performance. So yeah, and I have like 2,000 rounds of it sitting in my bedroom, so you know, having 2,000 rounds for a gun when you get it makes you like that caliber a lot more. And something else I think gives this has a massive advantage over an AK is the safety. As you can see, the stock is still folded. It's a bitch to unfold, but there we go. So it's unfolded now. You see, like, the safety right here is really similar to an AR. This is in fire and this is in safe. And I think the coolest thing about this safety is when you put your hand on the gun to shoot it and you put your finger on the trigger, you can feel the safety under your trigger finger. So you know that the safety is on without, you know, even squeezing the trigger. You go, and the safety on this gun is a dead trigger instead of like, you know, you're pulling against a brick wall. By the time you get to 30 pounds, you realize the safety's on like on an AK. No, you know right away that this is on. So I like that a lot. It's not ambidextrous, and I don't think the checkpoint guns had ambidextrous safeties either. It would be rad if it was ambidextrous, but it's not. It's not the end of the world. I think for a right-handed shooter, no big deal. For a left-handed shooter, the safety being on this side and this side is actually kind of a bad thing. But that pretty much wraps up the pros. And so yeah, I want to talk about the cons now. What I don't like about the gun. So what I don't like about the gun is the weight. That's what stands out to me most. It's lightweight. It's over a pound lighter than my 74, and it has a milled receiver. And you know, like, why don't you like the weight if you said you liked the weight earlier? I don't like the weight because shooting the gun, such a lightweight gun, is actually kind of unpleasant. This particular model is really punchy. It recoils a lot harder than I think any 7.62x39 gun should recoil. My other, you know, 7.62x39 gun is an SGL-21, and I have an AKM being built by Troy Sellers right now. I'll make another video when that gets here. But yeah, I feel like this gun, it just recoils excessively. Yeah, and I think the weight of it. Now, you know, that's the thing that I disagree with the most on the reviews that I saw on YouTube of the VZ2008 was everyone remarks, "Oh, it's so smooth. It's so smooth. It's really nice. It doesn't have as heavy of a bolt." I would agree. I would argue this bolt probably just as heavy as an AK, but I would disagree. This gun is not smooth to shoot. It's jumpy. It's abrupt recoil. The heavy bolt cycling back and forth really quickly is, yeah, it's just not as pleasant as an AK. An AK is more of a chug kind of recoil, but it's softer. It's a longer recoil, but it's softer. This is short and it's a little bit more harsh. Now, full disclaimer, this is a Century gun, not a checkpoint gun. I've never shot a checkpoint VZ2008 in 7.62x39. I've shot a checkpoint VZ2008 in 223, and that was one of the most pleasant 223 guns I've ever shot. It was great, super smooth. I'm not just trying to crap on Century because I've never shot a checkpoint in 7.62, so I don't know. I can't compare. All I know is I have a sample size of 1, and this gun is unpleasant to shoot. So much so that it's a gun that I would carry a lot because it's light, but not really shoot very much. Like a number 5 Mark 1 jungle carbine, you know, carbine. Something else I don't like about this gun is the slant brake. And the reason I don't like the slant brake on this gun is because the front end of the gun is so lightweight. The slant brake, excuse me, really, I feel like it really drives it down hard when it recoils. And I don't like that, because that, in conjunction with the gun being a lightweight gun and, spoiler alert, paratrooper stock, also makes it unpleasant to shoot. The cheek slap with the slant brake on is similar to like a Yugo M70 or M72 full stock. It's unpleasant, and in the cold weather, it's actually painful. Another thing I don't like about this gun is has to do with the stock. Most of the things I don't like about the gun have to do with the paratrooper stock. But oh yeah, when I shoot this gun, I take the slant brake off of it and just shoot it with bare threads, because it's much more pleasant. And side note, I hate the thread pitch on the gun because it's 14.1 by right hand. It's like the opposite. So I have like a bunch of 14 by 1 left hand muzzle nuts. I just want to throw a muzzle nut on here to protect the threads from getting carboned up, and I can't, because it's the opposite. I know the Czechs were giving a big middle finger to the Russians when they made this gun, but it's just a pain in the neck. That, yeah, I know you can find 14 by 1 right hand muzzle devices out there, but they're not as common, and very few companies make 14 by 1 right hand. I think CNC Warrior is one of the CNC Warrior and Checkpoint are like the only 2 that I know of. Anyway, so the stock unfolding is a nightmare on this gun. I hate it. This is a great gun for like backpacking because it is so compact when it folds up, but man alive, is the stock so hard to get unfolded. Now, I don't, some of you guys out there may have VZ2008s or 58s and with paratrooper stocks, and your stock may be, wonderful, may be easy to get folded and unfolded. But this one is so stiff, I barely have the hand strength to do it. In fact, most of the time I've got to resort to putting the gun on my lap and bashing it open. And, if I'm carrying this gun and I'm ever in a situation where I have to get the stock out in a hurry, that's going to just kill it. That sucks. So yeah, that's probably one of my least favorite things about the gun, actually, is how the stock unfolds, and the weight, of course. But, and the angle, the stock angle, is too sharply down. It's like a Type 3 underfolder. I don't like this angle. When you shoulder the rifle, you present your cheek, at least my cheek, is on the stock already. It makes it for a decent cheek weld, but you combine that cheek weld, high cheek weld, with a sharp recoil impulse, and there comes your stock slap. So I don't like the angle of the stock. I don't like how thin the strut is. I feel like because the strut is so thin, it makes it more painful when it recoils. If it was a little bit wider, like a Galil, I feel like it would probably be a lot more comfortable to shoot than what it is. The footprint of the stock, it's a pretty narrow footprint, pretty short, pretty narrow, and pair that with a pretty stout recoil impulse, makes for a pretty sore shoulder, even in a hoodie. I shot about 100 rounds through it last Monday afternoon, and yeah, my shoulder was sore. My SGL 21 and 74 don't do that. So again, I'll complain about the recoil impulse, and it may just be this gun. this gun in particular may be overgassed, and I suspect that it is. I think Green Mountain may have drilled the gas port on the barrel a little too wide. So this is not to rag on all VZ2008s. This is this particular one. It is, in my opinion, overgassed. So it makes for an unpleasant recoil impulse. And another thing that I absolutely hate about this gun is the mag release. I hate this so much. You can't access it from the right side of the gun. You just can't. It's blocked off. See the trigger, where the trigger guard is shaped? It comes in here. It's beveled out here, or it bows out here to allow you to get to the mag release, but you can only access the mag release from one side of the gun. I hate that so much. With my 74, I can access the mag release from either side of the gun, from the top of the gun, from the side of the gun, from the bottom of the gun. It's an ambidextrous mag release, and I prefer that. I'm used to that. I'm used to that. You can get to it in gloves, and when you're shooting in cold weather, wearing gloves, getting to this mag release with a thick glove on, that's a really thin little gap right there for the mag release. For the mag release lever itself and the trigger guard. That's really thin, and I don't even have big hands, but my thumb barely fits in there, and I think that's probably one of the biggest design flaws of this gun. It was invented by the Czechs. It gets cold as hell in Eastern Europe in the wintertime. Whose bright idea was it to put a tiny little mag release that's nearly impossible to get to with thick winter gloves on this gun? That's going to be their standard infantry rifle. Well, I don't know, it blows me away. I may be blowing that out of proportion, but I hate the mag release on this gun. Something else that I really hate on this particular gun is the trigger. I have done the trigger job on this gun, which is just dremeling off one of the two trigger tabs. But before I did that, the trigger on this gun was like 10 pounds. It was like 10 pounds, and it had almost an inch of creep. It was really similar to like a stock HK91 or PTR91 trigger. Long, heavy, not a really clean break. The Checkpoint VZ2008 that I shot in 223 had a really nice trigger. Long, but light and crisp break. The trigger job Century did on these was pretty bad. And I did cut one of the tabs off on the trigger, and it lightened the trigger up to about 6 pounds. So it's not great. It's still really long, has a lot of travel. I'll just show you. Still really long, has a lot of take up, but it's not as bad now that I've took one off. So take safety off and look at the take up there. So it's not as bad as like a Mosin gun, but it's not as good as any of my AKs. I'll say that. So I don't really like the trigger on it. Also, something I really despise about this trigger is the reset. I feel like the reset is just terrible. So pull the trigger, cycle the bolt, and the reset is like almost all the way to the end, and it's barely audible. You can't even feel it. I was shooting this gun the other day. You can't feel it at all through gloves. I was shooting this gun the other day with gloves on, and probably 10 times or more I would not let all the way out on the trigger, and so it wouldn't reset properly. And whenever I would go to pull the trigger again, dead trigger, because the trigger had never reset. That's not a problem I have on any of my AKs. That's not a problem I've ever had on any AR or FAL or any other semi-automatic rifle that I can think of off the top of my head, for that matter. Just this one. So yeah, the trigger reset on this gun is garbage. This gun, like I said, I feel like this particular one, your mileage may vary, but this particular one is overgassed. And something I think is just a really poor design is how the gas in this gun bleeds off. So this gun, for everybody that doesn't know, is a short stroke gas piston, like a AR 180 or G36 based off an AR 180. So they're similar to an SKS. When you shoot, the excess gas, instead of bleeding off out of the front of the gas block solid, like a G36, this bleeds off just out the sides of the handguard. It's not hot gas, it's not, fire or anything like that, so it doesn't hurt your hand or anything, but 20 rounds and your hand is going to be black. A lot of guys will say, oh, that's harmless. Sure, it's harmless, but I just don't like it. I think that's really poor design. I don't want, to get a shooting glove completely caked in carbon if I go shoot 120 rounds in an afternoon. I really think that's a really poor design. It has bleed off points in the very bottom of the gas block. You can't really see them. They're in there. So you can't really see them, but even still, enough for that gas bleeds off out of the handguards to make it a really dirty rifle to shoot. And I think that's just a design overlook. I guess the Czechs had a good reason for doing it that way, but I can't think of a good reason for doing it that way as a civilian shooter. Another thing I don't like about this gun has to do with the stock is the stock loosening. So after about 30 rounds, this stock will begin to wobble a lot more than the normal wobble in the mechanism. And the reason that is because what holds it to the gun is basically just a giant flathead screw. Maybe you see that. It's just a giant flathead screw. And maybe it's because this gun recoils excessively. After about 60 rounds, that flathead screw backs out. Backs out pretty reliably. That's my neighbor walking her dog. But it backs out pretty reliably to the point where when I can shoot this gun, I got to keep a flathead screwdriver in my pocket if I want to put more than a mag through it. And I know that could be easily fixed with some blue Loctite, yellow Loctite, but again, an AR-15 doesn't do that. An AK doesn't do that. So I feel like that's kind of a design flaw in the stock. I don't really like it. And another thing I don't like that has to do with the stock is the length of pull. As you can see, maybe I can get it open. We'll see. There we go. Gonna use some chin power. It's a really short length of pull. So I'm 5 foot 10 inches tall, and so it fits me, but it's really short. I shoot AKs with my head far forward. Usually like to touch my nose to the back of the dust cover. I don't like to do that with this gun because the length of pull is so short. My nose is running into the dust cover, and with the recoil, it hurts my nose. But I feel like the stock could be an inch longer, and that would make it great. And it wouldn't affect anything when the gun folds either, because if you see how the stock lays to the receiver, if it was an inch longer, it wouldn't be buttoned up or interfering with the handguard. So I think, if the stock was just a little longer, and maybe the full stock is. I don't have a full stock. I feel like half the things I hate about this gun could probably be alleviated by if it had a full stock and a muzzle brake. I'd probably keep it if it had a full stock and a muzzle brake, but I don't like the paratrooper stock. It's awful. Yeah, so that's pretty much the pros and cons of the gun. Thanks if you've gotten this far. You must be pretty bored. But thanks for watching. If you have, plan to make another YouTube video about my 74, my SGL 21, maybe a Beretta 92 FS, and some other guns that I got. I just want to, put my opinion out there, and if you enjoyed it, thanks. Leave a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you've been able to tolerate this video this long. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in.